Good morning, everyone, and we continue today our work on the great text, actually, and what's important in it, especially, of Rousseau's profession of faith of the Savoyard Priest. We had reached page 96 at the beginning, so we continue from there, where Rousseau is telling us that he reached a first truth about his existence, which I might ask you to compare, for example, with Descartes, and how Descartes reaches his truth, how Descartes reaches his I in the meditations, particularly meditation 2 that we read, but also meditation 1. I exist, Rousseau says, and I have senses through which I receive impressions. Okay. This is actually present also in Descartes, as you know. Descartes does reach the fact that not only he is ego cogito, thinking I, he is also an I with senses, so he is a body. So I exist and I have senses through which I receive impressions. And this is the first truth that strikes me, and I am forced to accept it. Have I any independent knowledge of my existence, or am I only aware of it through my sensations? This is my first difficulty, and so far I cannot solve it, for I continually experience sensations either directly or indirectly through memory. So how can I know if the feeling of self, if something beyond these sensations, or if it can exist independently of them? So the Savoyard Vicar here is saying, and Rousseau is entering another kind of doubt. In fact, we have an implicit critique of both empiricism and rationalism here, right? Do I have a self that is independent, he's asking, of my sensations? In other words, do I have a self that is not in the body, a self that is, not a body? I don't know, he says. So I'm not going to say that the Cartesians, rationalists, are right, that there is a thinking self, right? That there is a thinking substance independent of the feeling substance, the substance that has sensation. Okay. So he doesn't know. So the self is not clear, but neither does he here support anything like a pure empiricism, of course, because he doesn't say either that the self is born from sensations. Now, I continue. My sensations take place in myself, for they make me aware of my own existence. But their cause is outside me, for they affect me whether I have any reason for them or not, and they are produced or destroyed independently of me. So I clearly perceive that my sensation, which is within me, and its cause or its objects, which is outside me, are different things. So for Rousseau, at least, we know there is a world outside. This doesn't mean that we have to fall into something like Berkeley, into a kind of idealism, the idealism of Berkeley, that is ideality of the world, that only what I perceive is, right? Percipi ist esse, to perceive is to be. No, he's saying, I do realize, however, of course, there are sensations in me, and these are not the objects that are outside of me. So there is my inside, there is an interiority, there is something within me, and there is an outside world. And he continues, thus not only do I exist, since there is an outside world, other entities exist also. That is to say, the objects of my sensations, and even if these objects are merely ideas, still these ideas are not me. Of course, I am not my ideas, and if I have ideas that are produced somehow in me, however I may conceive of the objects of my sensations. So, in other words, there is a world outside, I am affected by these objects that are outside, and they are produced in me. However, of course, I am not my ideas. But everything I continue outside myself, everything which acts upon my sensation, I call matter, al-maddi. And all the particles of matter which I suppose to be united into separate entities I call bodies. Thus all the disputes of the idealists and the realists have no meaning for me. Their distinctions between the appearance and reality of bodies are wholly fanciful. Okay. Again, this of course puts all of Berkeley out. I am now as convinced of the existence of the universe as of my own. There is a world outside and there is me. I next consider the objects of my sensation, and I find that I have the power of comparing them. So I perceive that I am endowed with an active force of which I was not previously aware. All right. So I find something in myself. What is it? Is that I am not simply a passive receiver of different perceptions, of sensations, if you like. I can also work with these sensations. I can compare them. So there is a force in me, there is a capacity, if you like, a faculty, to speak more philosophically, a faculty that is able to compare. What does that mean? Of course, it means that you can judge. You compare things to judge them. This is why Rousseau continues, to perceive is to feel. Okay? To compare is to judge. To judge and to feel are not the same. So you compare things and you feel things. And of course, feeling something is not yet comparing it. So to compare is to judge, to perceive is to feel, and to judge and to feel are not the same. Through sensation, objects present themselves to me separately and singly as they are in nature. By comparing them, I rearrange them, I shift them, so to speak. I plate one upon another to decide whether they are alike or different, etc. To my mind, the distinctive faculty of an active or intelligent being is the power of understanding this word is. I seek in vain in the merely sensitive entity that intelligent force which compares and judges. I can find no trace of it in its nature. This passive entity will be aware of each object separately. It will even be aware of the whole formed by the two together, but having no power to place them side by side, it can never compare them. It can never form a judgment with regard to them. In other words, Rousseau is saying, I cannot be reduced to mere sensation. Mere sensation does not tell me that I am able to compare. No? I am not just a passive thing, I am an active thing. I am a person who can think the being of things, who understands then the word is. So I cannot be reduced to a sensory body. In other words, of course, in Rousseau, there is a rejection of materialism. All right. And the next paragraph at the end just confirms this. These comparative ideas, greater, smaller, together with number ideas of 1, 2, etc., are certainly not sensations. I use them to compare, although my mind only produces them when my sensations occur. So in my mind, I have things. My mind has an operation that cannot be reduced to sensation. And of course, my mind can compare sensations. Okay. Now, for a kind of relation to God, we go to page 97, and please read with me the paragraph before the last. We have to jump now. You ask me if the movements of animals are spontaneous. My answer is I cannot tell, but analogy points that way. You ask me again, how do I know that there are spontaneous movements? I tell you, I know it because I feel them. I want to move my arm and I move it without any other immediate cause of the movement but my own will. In vain would anyone try to argue me out of this feeling. It is stronger than any proofs. You might as well try to convince me that I do not exist. If there were no spontaneity in men's actions, nor in anything that happens on this earth, it would be all the more difficult to imagine a first cause for all motion. Okay. So this is about spontaneity. What Why is this notion important? When we speak of something spontaneous, we mean by that, and Rousseau, of course, means by that, and that's a debate in the 18th century, that I can do something without anything previously determining it as its cause, right? I repeat, I can do something without anything determining it as its cause, right? Previously determining it as its cause. If I were a materialist, I would say that doesn't exist. There are always causes to explain why I do something. For example, if Rousseau here is telling us I can decide to move my arm without there being any other explanation than the fact that I just now wanted to move my arm. A kind of freedom also of indifference is there, but this is we find this also in Descartes, right? In Descartes says that there is a kind of basic will, a basic arbitre that is at a very, very low level, that is not justified by anything except that I just want to do it. And this proves the freedom of man. In other words, to speak of spontaneous actions is to speak of actions that are free. It is a way to prove that there is in me something that is not moved by other causes. There is in me something that cannot be explained by material causes. So there is in me something that just decides. There is a will in me, and this will is not material because it's not part of the material determinations of cause and effect. So to speak of the spontaneous is, of course, to speak of a non-material. We can call it as you wish, a spiritual principle, if you like. Now, the way Descartes proves it is, of course, very rational. He goes to reason to say that this proves that I have, of course, I am an ego cogitans, I am a thinking I. Rousseau, notice how this word comes back a lot. Rousseau knows that I have spontaneous acts. Rousseau knows that I will. I have my own will, right? Then I am not just a material thing following material principles, not because I'm going to rationality, but because I feel it. And so, of course, this is the central, I would say, notion in Rousseau here and in all this excerpt that we're reading, long, of course, but very important excerpt, is feeling. I feel it, Rousseau, I feel it. And feeling cannot be reduced in Rousseau to just, of course, sensations. Feeling is something that I have inside of me, and we'll see it developing. I feel something is true, and that makes it true. There is something inside of me that tells me the truth, that is very basic, that is placed there, and that is in a way actually holy, as you will see. Okay. Page 98. Refutal of materialism. Yet this visible universe consists of matter, matter diffused and dead, matter which has none of the cohesion, the organization, the common feeling of the parts of a living body. For it is certain that we who are parts have no consciousness of the whole. The same universe is in motion, and its movements ordered, uniform, and subject to fixed laws. Right? So no freedom there. It has none of that freedom which appears in the spontaneous movements of men and animals. So the world is not some huge animal which moves of its own accord. Its movements are therefore due to some external cause, a cause which I cannot perceive. But the inner voice makes this voice so apparent to me that I cannot watch the course of the sun without imagining a force which drives it. And when the earth revolves, I think I see the hand that sets it in motion. And jump one paragraph. The first causes of motion are not to be found in matter. Matter receives and transmits motion, but does not produce it. Jump with me. 7 lines. There is no real action. Please underline now. There is no real action without will. This is my first principle. I believe therefore that there is a will which sets the universe in motion and gives life to nature. This is my first dogma, or the first article of my creed. So, we know now this feeling, what it is in connection with. It's in connection with what, not with sensation merely, but with what Rousseau calls an inner voice. There is a truth, in other words, that speaks in us, feeling in us that is true. And that is, of course, then more basic, more fundamental than reason. And this is why I said in the previous lecture, Rousseau, the enfant terrible of the Enlightenment, announces Romanticism, announces the Romantic period, where feeling is truth and not understanding and rationality. So through this inner voice, I know the truth. And through this inner voice, I realize, of course, that in matter, you cannot have freedom. And if this matter is in movement, the first causes, or what, not just the general cause, the second causes of nature. We can explain different things, why this ball moved because another hit it. We're speaking about the first causes, what produced the first movement in matter. This movement cannot be in matter itself. It has to come from another cause. So it has to come from something that is not matter. It has to come from basically. And this is a kind of theism. There is a God that moved this world. Okay, and there is, of course, here indirectly, there is an argument from design, that the world is designed like a clock is designed, and so somebody had to do it. Somebody had to carry out the first action and put motion in the thing. Okay? So the first principle of Rousseau is that there is no real action without will, and so from that, since there is action to make the universe move, and there is then somebody who moved it, there is a God. We are going to make jumps. To go to a second article of Rousseau's Creed and read it briefly. Page 99, the last paragraph there. Please note it. So there is, of course, somebody who moved, who put motion in this universe. Now, what kind of motion is it? If matter in motion, I read last paragraph, page 99. If matter in motion points me to a will, which is God actually, matter in motion according to fixed laws points me to an intelligence. That is the second article of my creed. So we have first that there is a will that produced motion in this matter, that is the universe. But not only did it produce motion, it also produced a very organized, if you like, motion. It put laws to these motions. So it's not just something that moves the world, it is something that established a certain order. There is a design, to come back to this world, to this word. There is a design in this matter, and so where there is a design, of course, there is an intelligence. So we have a will and an intelligence, and of course they are both, as you know, in a God. And page 100 now. Simply the second paragraph, page 100. Let us compare the special ends. I'm reading Rousseau. Let us compare the special ends, the means, the ordered relations of every kind. Then let us listen to the inner voice of feeling. What healthy mind can reject its evidence? Unless the eyes are blinded by prejudices, can they fail to see that the visible order of the universe proclaims a supreme intelligence? What sophism must be brought together before we fail to understand the harm of existence, the harm my existence, and the wonderful cooperation of every part for the maintenance of the rest. There is a mistake here, don't worry, it's not an important sentence. Say what you will of combinations and probabilities. What do you gain by reducing me to silence if you cannot gain my consent? And how can you rob me of the spontaneous feeling which, in spite of myself, continually gives you the lie that the world didn't just organize itself? Okay? Jump, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. Yeah, if anyone told me that printed characters scattered, broadcast, and produced the Aeneid all complete, the Aeneid written by Virgil, هي ملحمة عن روما، كيف أتت روما إلى الوجود، Aeneid, by Aeneas. Virgil's Aeneid. Yet if anyone told me that printed characters scattered broadcasts had produced, let's say, Al-Mutanabbi, the Aeneid all complete, I would not condescend to take a single step to verify this falsehood. I jump, last 3 lines of the paragraphs, so that life and organization will not be produced by flow of atoms, and a chemist, when making his compounds, will never give them thought and feelings in his crucible. And please note, next paragraph, line 6, the concord and harmony of the whole escapes us. Okay, so simply Rousseau says, what does the inner voice of feeling? Again, its feeling is the inner voice. There is a conflation of the two. So what is the immediate thing I feel? What is the immediate thing that I feel that gives me thought, in fact? The inner voice means that feeling is actually thought. It gives us thought. That's why Rousseau doesn't just say feeling, he'll say an inner voice of feeling. What do I have? What do I feel to be true here? What I feel to be true is that I cannot even conceive of this large universe, which is of course larger than the Aeneid itself, just come into existence. And I'm thinking by itself. I'm thinking by analogy. Rousseau is thinking by analogy, of course. If a book so large, an epic as the Aeneid came into existence through the mind of Virgil and not by chance, as a materialist would think, so much more the universe. The universe cannot have come by chance. So you can do whatever you want, try to prove whatever you want, using your reason, not using your reason. You will never convince me that there is not an intelligence that made this world exist and brought it into harmony. The inner voice of feeling. Now, we jump again. I'm going to jump a lot because all that's going to follow is about disproving the materialist, following our inner voice, and knowing that we have a soul, and we know our soul again through feeling and through thought, the importance still on feeling. I will let you go through this. Also some interesting ideas of Rousseau on hell. And what is important now, please, of course, I expect you reading all this. Let's go to the notion of conscience. This is another key notion in Rousseau. So we're going to jump actually, and you'll be happy for this, a few pages. We're going to go to page 109. Page 109, paragraph 3. Okay. And even paragraph 2, actually. Something about God first and then about the voice of conscience in me. Okay. Paragraph 2. In a word, the more I strive to envisage his infinite essence, so God's infinite essence, the less do I comprehend it. This is a famous statement by Rousseau, but it is, and that is enough for me. Please underline, this is a famous sentence of Rousseau, the less I understand, the more I adore. Stop. This is what you need to retain from this paragraph. This is a big statement and really Rousseau-like statement. The less I understand, the more I adore. Why is it such an important statement? It is such an important statement if we remember and we know that the very big principle of the Enlightenment is the notion not simply of reason, which was in the 17th century the highest notion, but also in addition to reason, the Enlightenment brought understanding. What we have to distinguish, of course, reason and understanding are highly linked. The understanding is, if you like, reason as it approaches the world. It's reason knowing the world. So the faculty in us that knows the world is Verstehen in German, it's understanding, in French entendement. And it's Verstehen, entendement, understanding. That is the very heart also of the Enlightenment. We have to go to the world, and what we understand is what is true. So understanding, which will be criticized by, at the beginning of the, again, Romanticism, Hegel criticizes the understanding, which he says is killing reason, and the Romantics will criticize understanding because it organizes the world instead of going to the truth, which is in feelings. We see this happening in Rousseau. So the less I understand is a statement that is telling us that the less I use my understanding, the less I am a person of the Enlightenment. The less I am like Diderot, the less I am like Holbach, or as a materialist, of course, the less I am like all the great figures of the Enlightenment, Locke in England, for example. Or Voltaire, of course, the big figure, Voltaire in France. So the less I am like these guys, relying only on my understanding to know God, so the less I understand God, the less I use my reason, in other words, and my understanding to know God, the more I adore God, the more I am close to Him, because He's not a question of me with my understanding determining what He is. God is not something you reach merely through rational arguments. It is something you reach through feeling. So the less I understand, the more complex the whole thing is about God, the more it goes beyond my understanding, the more I realize how much greater He is, right? The more I adore. The famous sentence. You can see it, you can, in different ways, you can comment on it in different ways. So in other words, less understanding leads, if you like, to more faith. Iman. Less understanding leads to more faith. Rousseau is going against the whole big tradition that starts with Thomas Aquinas in the Middle Ages, who says there is no contradiction between faith and reason. And of course, Rousseau is saying, no, in fact, there is. The more something is less subject to reason's work and understanding, the more it becomes a wonder, and the more I adore. And that thing is God. I jump to the next paragraph. Having thus deduced from the perception of objects of sense and from my inner consciousness, which leads me to judge of causes by my native reason, the principal truth which I require to know, I must now seek such principles of conduct as I can draw from them, and such rules as I must lay down, there's a mistake here, for my guidance in the fulfillment of my destiny in this world, according to the purpose of my Maker, God. Still following the same method, I do not derive these rules for my conduct, so morality, from the principles of the higher philosophy. I'm not going to go read any kind of philosophy on ethics, for example, or morals. I find these rules in the depths of my heart, traced by nature in characters which nothing can efface. I need only consult myself with regard to what I wish to do. What I feel to be right is right. What I feel to be wrong is wrong. Conscience is the best casuist that interprets the cases. And it is only when we haggle with conscience, when we fight with it, if you like, when we negotiate too much with it, that we have recourse to the subtleties of argument. Our first duty is towards ourselves. Yet how often does the voice of others tell us that in seeking our good at the expense of others, we are doing ill? We think we are following the guidance of nature and we are resisting it. We listen to what she says to our senses and we neglect what she says to our heart. The active being obeys. The passive commands. Conscience is the voice of the soul. The passions are the voice of the body. It is strange that these voices often contradict each other, and then to which should we give heed? Too often does reason deceive us. We have only too good a right to doubt her, but conscience never deceives us. She is the true guide of man. It is to the soul what instinct is to the body. He who obeys his conscience is following nature, and he need not fear that he will go astray. This is a matter of great importance, continued my benefactor. Seeing that I was about to interrupt him, let me stop a while to explain it more fully. The morality of our actions, next paragraph, consists entirely in the judgments we ourselves form with regard to them. If good is good, it must be good in the depth of our heart as well as in our actions. Let's stop here. So this is probably one of the, not probably, surely one of the most important paragraphs. So as you review for your exams, keep it in mind, and also for your homeworks, which I will give at the end of this, whenever we finish Rousseau. So let's go through it again. I need, after all, not just to believe in the existence of a God. I need to also, because this God is intelligent and this God has a plan, if you like, for the world, and this God did something with the world, and this God has thought, I need to see now what are the consequences on my life insofar as how I live. In other words, I need to see what moral principles I can derive, right? I am, don't forget that this is a religious text in the end. Rousseau is saying, what can be the foundation of my morality? Is it going to be something that the church gives me? You do this, you go to heaven. If not, you go to hell. Please read the passage about hell in this. What do we get a reward or not? The church determines things. Is it something like the materialists say, there is no God? Is it something like deists say, right? God made this universe, he's the great architect, and he left us the freedom to do what we want. He doesn't intervene, so there is no providence in the world. So we rely only on our reason to create morals, to have morals. This is what we get eventually in Kant. Kant's morals, so after Rousseau, of course, we're not there yet. After Rousseau, Kant is going to determine all morals based on reason, on the law of reason, on a categorical imperative that is the expression in a maxim of the law of reason. Of the making the will obey the law of reason. So is it any of these things? Rousseau says no. The foundation of morals is elsewhere. So I read third line, I must now seek such principles of conduct, morals, as I can draw from what I discovered so far, and such rules as I must lay down for my guidance in the fulfillment of my destiny in this world, according to the purpose of my Maker. So how do I live in this world according to how God made me and made this world? Here's the answer. Rousseau says, I do not get these rules, I do not derive these rules from the principle of higher philosophy. I'm not going to go to any kind of moral philosophy. I find them not in philosophy, not in a rationally determined work, not in rationally organized work, but in the depth of my heart. Rousseau here joins Pascal. Pascal, who spoke about the truths of the heart. Pascal says the heart has its ways which reason does not know. So there is a truth in our heart, and this is what Rousseau is clearly influenced by here. There is a truth of the heart that is more basic, that is more powerful, it's more immediate, more spontaneous, if you like. A truth of my heart more immediate than any truth that comes to me through reason, through reasoning through things. So I do not get these rules from reason. I find them in the depths of my heart. Okay. How? These rules are traced by nature. The importance then of nature in Rousseau. Traced by nature, which is divine, since God created and organized it. Traced by nature in characters which nothing can efface. So I am naturally in possession of certain rules of how to live. They are the truth of my heart. And notice, nothing can efface them. They will never ever disappear. All right? This is very important, because very often we read Rousseau as someone who says we are in society corrupt. There's the famous saying of Rousseau in the Social Contract that man is good and society corrupts him at the beginning of the book. Man is good, society corrupts him. Yes, man is good and society corrupts him, but what nature has placed in man may be covered over. This good that is in man, this truth that is in man, these rules of the heart that are in man, they are covered over, they never completely disappear. This is why education is possible. So Rousseau is saying I can have good morals because nothing can efface these marks left by nature in me, these rules left in nature in me on how to live my life. So all I need to do, he continues, I need only consult myself with regard to what I wish to do. Underline, please. This is a famous, again, sentence in Rousseau. What I feel to be right is right. So the criterion of right, the criterion of what should be done, it can be for a rationalist, it's what reason tells me is right. What my analysis of something tells me is right. What my deductive reasoning gives me as right. Rousseau says, no. There is no deduction here. What I feel is the feeling inside me, the inner voice. What is this inner voice? We will now know more. What I feel to be right is right. What I feel to be wrong is wrong. Conscience is this. So we know now what is this feeling and what is this inner voice. So the feeling that gains expression and so is in thought, gives thought, it's my conscience. Notice that we move in this, at the beginning of the paragraph we spoke of inner consciousness, and now we speak of conscience. The word is the same in French, conscience and conscience. But what is this movement? Consciousness is awareness, is when you know that something is what it is. Conscience is when you return upon that thing and see if it is good or bad. So you make a moral judgment. This is what conscience does. And this conscience that is making the moral judgment and telling me what is right or wrong is the inner voice of the feeling in me, of my heart. So conscience is the best casuist. It means the one that interprets events according to moral rules in this case. Conscience is the best casuist, and it is only when we haggle with conscience that we have recourse to the subtleties of argument. Always follow, in other words, Rousseau says, your conscience. Okay? I jump, our first duty is towards ourselves, etc. I jump 5 lines. Conscience, underline please, is the voice of the soul. Passions are the voice of the body. So my soul, which is not material, we have already established that a human not only has a material side, his body, but also freedom, and so there is an existence of a non-material spiritual element that is the soul, and this soul has a voice. It is the voice of my heart, of my inner feeling. It is the conscience. Conscience is the voice of the soul. Passions are the voice of the body. It is strange that these voices often contradict each other, and then to which should we give heed? Too often does reason deceive us. We have only too good a right to doubt her, but conscience never deceives us. She is the true guide of man. It is to the soul what instinct is to the body. There is, if you read before, a critique of Descartes' dualism, right? That there is a kind of communication between body and soul. Descartes says, and Rousseau says, I don't understand how this dualism can really function. I don't believe in the dualism of Descartes, in other words. And Descartes says we have to make reason govern things, and then we, of course, not in a dramatic way, not like we would find in the Stoics, but we must let reason guide us, and we must allow the good passions such as generosity to rule and so on, not the bad passions, and reason can help us with this. Now, all of this for Rousseau is out because it is not reason, he says, that should be the guide. Reason actually makes mistakes. Reason often is in error. Reason deceives us. This is a bit like Pascal again. Pascal says that our reason is weak. We cannot really know the truth only through reason. The higher truth is the truth of the heart. There are truths of the heart. And again, the heart has its ways which reason does not know. So too often does reason, or to be more precise, Pascal says, and here we find it again, the heart has its reason, actually, which reason does not know, or the heart has its reasons which reason does not know. Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît pas. So reason deceives us. We have only too good a right to doubt her. We have to doubt reason itself. We don't reach, like with Descartes, something clear and distinct that are the clear and distinct ideas in reason. So reason becomes the land to build on truth. No, there is no truth. This is not in reason. What doesn't deceive us, what is always giving us the right judgment, if we don't let it be clouded by other considerations, if we don't let the society cloud what nature placed in us, nature most holy, the best expression of God, if we don't let that happen, we have a true guide. Conscience, if we leave it as it is, never deceives us. Rousseau says, she is the true guide of man. It is to the soul what instinct is to the body. It means it is the essence of the soul. So we stop here, reflect on this, please, and next time, as I told you, we will be able to finish Rousseau. So next time we'll finish Rousseau, and I'll give you an assignment to work on, and then we will move to Diderot, a very simple text, and finally to our final text for the semester in Kant. We are very, very much on time, right? We are really on time. Since Diderot was supposed to be on April 21st. So we are almost 1 week ahead, and this is very good for us. The fact that we didn't take a holiday gave us an extra session. Good luck to all of you. I hope everyone managed to follow, and we continue next time from page 110. Stay safe.